Hey there, my name's Brashler, and in this video, I want to talk to you about the low cut, or the high pass filter, explain what it is, and then how we can actually use this to clean up our mixes. Now, if you're brand new to my channel, I'm all about helping you feel more confident with your production gear, no matter where you're starting from. So let's go ahead and dive in. Now, the low cut, or the high pass filter, is an EQ filter that allows us to filter out the low end. So by high pass, it's a filter that passes the high frequencies through the filter, but blocks the low frequencies. And it's also called a low cut because it's cutting out the low end out of the frequencies. So let's check out the low cut here on the Behringer X32. Now on the Behringer X32, all we have to do is select a channel. So I'm going to go ahead and have my little talkback mic here. I'm going to go ahead and select this. And over on the upper left-hand portion in the configuration and preamp section is the low cut. Now you can enable this and then adjust the frequency here. Now we'll notice that if we press view in the configuration and preamp section, it actually pulls up our preamp page, and it also shows us our low cut and where it is on the frequency chart. Now we can select anywhere from between 20 hertz all the way up to 400 hertz. Obviously, the lower that number, the lower the frequency it is. And 400 hertz is the max that we can get to on our low cut. Now, one little tip that I have is once you turn on the low cut, press view in the EQ screen because built into your Behringer X32 is an RTA, or a real-time analyzer, which shows us by color and by frequency the amplitude that the frequencies are actually happening with. So if I whistled, we would see that that would come up right here in a straight line. Now, with our low cut, if I was to start talking into this microphone, and I'm going to go ahead and mute my head mic here. Check 1, 2. And so here is this microphone. And so if I take up this low cut and start bringing this up higher and higher and higher, we'll notice that I am starting to lose my low portion of my voice. Now, I don't have that low, deep of a voice, but we can imagine if I set this at 400, my voice sounds pretty weird. This doesn't sound like I sound normally. Now, with a low cut, we want to find that spot where the low cut doesn't adjust the voice too much, but also gets rid of some of the handling noise or the plosives that will happen. So for instance, if I was talking and this was going through a system that also had a set of subwoofers that were pulled off of the main left-right, which is pretty common for a lot of venues or churches. Now, if I was talking into this microphone and I did have a deep voice, I would be rumbling those subwoofers, especially if I said any plosive words that start with a P. That rush of wind that happens is going to rock the subwoofers and echo in your room from the amount of low end from that P word. So this is why we have our low cut. Now, when we set our low cut, the goal is to adjust the low cut to cut out the low frequencies that don't actually matter. Now, as I'm talking into this microphone, check 1, 2, 3, 4, we will notice that the RTA, if I get really low, doesn't really go below 100 hertz. And for most voices, it's not going to go below 100 hertz, maybe 80 on the lowest side. But unless you're a really bass singer, you don't really need to reproduce the frequencies that are below 100 hertz for a standard voice. So my goal here, if I was wanting to set a low cut for this microphone, would be to start at 100 hertz. So here it is, check 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, I can adjust this up or down depending on how much low end I want to cut out. So check 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And this at 160 still sounds really reasonable. Now, if I went ahead and turned this off, 1, 2, 3, 4, we would hear that there is a lot more of that low end that's happening. Now, a perfect example of this is a set of drum overheads. So I have a set of music here, and I'm going to go ahead and turn up the drum overheads. Now, overheads are great for getting a very good picture of what the drum kit sounds like. And usually when I'm mixing, I really like to bring in those overheads in a good spot to be able to get a very nice picture, and then I'll add in the close mics to that to enable to really bring up and accentuate those different portions of the kit, the snare drum, the kick, the toms, etc. But if we listen to this, there is a lot of rumble in this. And I'm actually going to enable my EQ, and I'm going to go to my high band. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this to a high cut. Now, a high cut is cutting out the high frequency and letting the low frequencies through it. So it's a low pass filter. It's basically the opposite of a low cut. It's a high cut. And so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to bring my frequency of this band all the way down so we can listen to the really low end frequencies of these overheads and notice that there's not really much that's happening that we need to reproduce. Now that is set at 98 Hertz. There's not really any information from this that would benefit our mix. If we reproduced this, it would just add rumble to a kick drum, it would add rumble to the bass, and it would take those bass and kick drum channels and it would add in the sound of this in the overheads, and it would just kind of slur and smudge your low end, and it wouldn't get you a really good sound by adding this. And so that's what the low cut is for. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of this EQ here, and I'm going to turn on our low cut. And I'm going to start bringing this up. And even just setting this at 100 just cleared up so much of those overheads. Here it is without the low cut. And here it is with. And this is with no EQ on these overheads. Now, if I was to go add in a kick drum, so let me go find my kick, and I'll do a little bit of low cut on my kit. I'm gonna do a little bit of EQ here. Okay, so let's go ahead and bring in our overheads. And here's with the low cut turned off. And I'm going to go ahead and bring in my kick drum here. Okay, but let's go to my overheads, and I'm going to turn on that low cut. Now I'm going to turn off that low cut. There's with the low cut turned on, and with it turned off. And let's go ahead and add in some bass guitar. Okay. So I have bass guitar, I have my kick drum, I have my overheads, and let's go ahead and enable that low cut. So clearly, the amount of low end that's coming through these overheads is a lot. And so by putting this low cut on, we're cleaning up so much of that echo and room rumble, which makes so much more space for our kick drum and our bass guitar. And so if I was to turn off that low cut, it just sounds more rumbly. So a good general rule of thumb is that subwoofers start around 120 hertz and go all the way lower. Most subwoofers are going to be starting around the 100 hertz. Sometimes they go up to 120, 160. Sometimes they even go to 180. But chances are, if you have a full sound system with subwoofers, your system engineer that set up your PA system most likely set that crossover for those subwoofers at 100 hertz. That's a very common number. Sometimes they will go lower and go into 80 or even 60 if you have a very large main array system. But for the most part, if you don't want a channel to go to your subwoofers, you can put a low cut at 100 hertz. That is a very good general rule of thumb. In fact, most consoles made in the analog days that had the low cut was either going to be a low cut of 80, 100, or 120. And so that was just basic for an analog console. There was a physical button that you would just press to turn on that low cut per channel. Now, on our Behringer X32, we have the ability of turning it on, but then also sweeping it between 20 hertz all the way up to that 400 hertz. And so just if you are starting using low cut for the first time, my suggestion is to start at 100 hertz, turn it on, and then adjust it up or down until you get the sound that you're looking for. Now, I hope this video was helpful for you today. If you are on a path learning more about the X32 and you are starting out as a sound engineer and want to learn more and dive deeper into this thing, I have over on my website at drewbrashler.com, I have a course called the X32 Fundamentals course. This is where I go through section by section of the entire board of the X32 and teach you how to use every single section. So if you're brand new starting with the X32, go check that out if you're interested. It's at drewbrashler.com. Link is also down in the description below. But if you do happen to have any questions, or there's another section of the X32 that you want me to teach you, please post that in the comment section down below. I'm always reading through those comments to find videos that can be helpful for you. If you haven't already, make sure to check out my website at drewbrashler.com. Otherwise, I hope you have a great day.